representative of the Syrian Arab Republic.
شكرا.
Thank you, Mr. President. My delegation wishes to make the following points. One, the climate of international relations 100 years following the beginning of the First World War are not promising. They do not point to the fact that states involved in that war had learned anything from the history of that catastrophe, as that war was followed by a Second World War, more destructive and more painful. Now the very same policies seem to govern most international relations towards chaos, towards what might be called a Third World War being waged by the same colonial states with the same spirit of opportunism. However, this time the agents are present in many areas of conflict around the world. The creation of the United Nations regrettably did not lead to the noble objective for which it was created, saving successive generations from the scourge of war, as is stated in the preamble of the Charter. Our peoples, whose voices rose with the voices of the peoples of the United Nations, calling to a denunciation of war and avoiding their scourge on humanity following the Second World War, have now been suffering more than any time before from the effects of wars that have done much harm to the world, particularly to our Arab region, that we still feel today. The suffering of our peoples have redoubled because of continuing armed aggression and various forms of armed military invasion during our history, particularly against Syria, Iraq, Libya, and Gaza. It is truly ironic that the end of the First World War in Europe was directly followed by the painful road of European colonial wars against other peoples. As soon as the weapons of war fell silent during that war, the governments of France and Britain drafted the Sykes-Picot Agreement, a deplorable agreement that divided the states and peoples of the region to areas of influence and occupation and opened the way to the Balfour Agreement of 1917 that planted the Zionist settler colonialism in occupied Palestine and led to unprecedented injustice and a settler Israeli occupation of Arab and Palestinian land that continues until today. The Sykes-Picot Agreement also opened the way to the French occupation authorities that stripped Iskenderun from the lands of the Syrian Arab Republic and handed it to Turkey, that continues to occupy it until today, in order to bribe Turkey's rulers at the time not to enter the Second World War at the side of Nazi Germany. What many states are witnessing in the Arab region and the crises therein compel us to wonder on the identity of who benefits from such crises, particularly that we have witnessed organized, coordinated activities in our Arab region by many states, one after the other, using the same tools and the same slogans, with the same plots, with the same means, with the same involvement by states and regional and local authorities, leading to the killing of millions of innocents and the destruction on an unprecedented scale. The peoples of the region are paying the price of the military invasion of Iraq in 2003, which took place following unilateral claims refused by the Security Council and the Secretary General of the United Nations at the time. That led to tragedies we are all aware of. The Libyan people is also paying the price of direct military intervention, which has destroyed the country and handed it to armed groups and Takfiri gangs that threaten the peace and security of every Libyan. And now we have seen terrorists and weapons sent to my country, Syria. Perhaps it is time to speak on the destruction of the state in Somalia as well as other African states. The United Nations is called upon to bear its responsibilities and undertake the role mandated by the member states of the United Nations within international law and the Charter, particularly equality in sovereignty and non-intervention, the maintenance of international peace and security and preventive action to avoid conflict. Their settlement is not limited to competing to condemn terrorism and to justify it with words like spring, revolution, popular uprising and peaceful movement. This is a clear policy of double standards in this organization that continues to frustrate the hopes of our peoples, and thank you. Shukran liman.
And now to the representative of Kazakhstan.
Mr. President, thank you and all previous distinguished speakers.